Uh, the funny thing about approaching, Daniel, gotcha. The funny thing about approaching Photoshop in the beginning is there's so many different processes just to get to doing something. And that's what we're going to do today. Last class that we were here, we sort of entered into Photoshop, felt around about how to, if you recall, make layers and make clipping masks. I'll review, layer masks. I'm talking about clipping masks today. Layers and layer masks, sort of rendering parts of a layer invisible and leaving other parts opaque. We're going to go over that again today. And then we're also going to talk about how to do a number of things that sort of build upon that. And what we're going to end with after, not next class, but the class after, we'll have a booklet that contains multiple images that we've put together in the form of a comic or a graphic novel. What I'd like to do is start by just showing you some images of graphic novels and talking about that. And then I'm going to talk about our physical layout. I'm going to show you how to do things, and then I'm going to give you plenty of time to work on things today and come around and help individually. That's the plan for class today. Okay? So let me talk about first just the form, and then we'll talk about the content, and then we'll talk about the how. Your homework for today was supposed to have been find a story that you're interested in. And if you have a story, you can easily sort of suss out individual moments to visually describe a story. For example, if you have the story of Three Little Pigs, right? You have an image of a pig building a house out of straw, a picture of a pig building a house out of wood, a pig building a house out of bricks, the wolf blowing on the house with straw, the wolf blowing on the house with bricks. I don't even know the story anymore. The wolf blowing on the house with wood, the wolf blowing on the house with bricks. All of a sudden, that's 6 frames, that's 6 drawings or images that you can put, and we're not talking about drawings, we're talking about images here. Images that you put together, and obviously there can be more frames in between. I'm just sort of giving you a general idea of this structure. So, so what's the form of a comic? I mean, we're all pretty familiar with this, hopefully. Sorry, people, 1 second. This is not plugged in at all. So, what we're going to do, just so you know the structure of what we're doing, is we're going to be printing on 8.5 by 11 pieces of paper, normal size letter sheets. We're going to print portrait layout, divided in the middle, both front and back. And we're going to make basically 2 pieces of paper, which is going to give us 8 pages. Okay? And funny thing is, here's going to be a cover. And then this is front, back. Page 1. Back cover. What we're going to do is have individual pages that we're going to be laying out. Very much like, pretty intense page Here's an interesting comic that has a title page, basically, that has one big block of illustration, a little bit of text, and then as you go into the inside, you'll see that there's rectangles and other shapes used to designate these individual illustration areas, right? You're sort of all familiar with comics, right? This is not, I'm not explaining anything new here. I'm just pointing out how the structure works. So we're going to have a cover with the title here. Actually, I should probably put this up here. Some title, and there'll be some illustration here. And then on page 1, you'll divide page 1 up into some areas at some point, same thing with page 2. This is not, I'm not giving you the process right here, I'm just sort of giving you an end point, and we will get the process in a second. But you can have different shapes. You know, you could have different ways of laying out pages. I have a number of comics or graphic novels here you can sort of flip through just to get a sense of different page layouts. There are some interesting ones back here. You know, where you could have text, a big picture text. It's very actually dynamic in this book. I'm going to leave that right there. Check it out. There's so many ways to lay out a page. It's something that what I'm going to ask you to do today is actually end with this point. I'm sort of starting at the end and we're going to come down to what we're working on. And what we're going to do is let our content really define our page layout. And what I mean by content is the images that we're using. How prominent do you want this image on the page? That this defines how large you want it and what size. Now, what I was just showing you was basically drawings, comics that are drawn. And not all comics are hand-drawn, although really the vast majority are. Here's an interesting graphic novel that utilizes very much a mixed approach, where you have photographs that have been worked over in Photoshop to enhance their sort of emotional impact, and then there's either drawings or other photographs put in along with text. And honestly, this graphic novel is what I was thinking about when coming up with this project. Much more photorealistic images, because that's what we're probably finding. You can find drawings too. We are finding material, right? We are not generating a lot of material here. We went out and took pictures last class of art, hopefully, and people around. And like last class, I showed you how to gather some images. And I'd like to just go over that again with the Library of Congress. I'll do that, because I feel like what happened was last time we tried to access the Library of Congress, it didn't like so many requests from our IP address, and we thought we were trying to launch a denial of service attack, which is why it shut us down. So we'll have to do that individually. Now, you sort of hopefully have an idea of where we're ending, right? How do we get there? How do we generate the material to put into these frames? How do we generate the images to create these pages? Let me show you that now. Okay, great. So let's back up to square one. What do you want to make a comic about? You can make a comic about a story, like I just said. If you have a story in mind that you should have generated or found for homework, that's great. think about the individual scenes in the story, and that will really help you generate pages. Your story can be fictional. It can be something like The Three Little Pigs or Goldilocks. Is that the same strand? Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Or it can be autobiographic. It can be something that is real. You know, my morning getting to school, you know, can be just as dramatic as, you know, wandering through a forest and dropping pebbles to find your way home. So that's one way of sort of approaching a comic. You come up with an idea, you break that story into chunks of scenes and then illustrate them. Another way to generate a comic is by just working with images and creating more of a train of thought or abstract, non-linear composition, if you will. The train of thought gives you, as the creator, much more freedom as far as coming up with anything to put in, but it puts a lot more onus on you to keep your reader interested. I mean, if it's complete nonsense, who's going to want to turn a page for more nonsense? How do you keep somebody engaged in an abstract image or set of images? It's a challenge. And a third way to approach generating ideas, or the overall concept behind a comic that we're working on in this class, would be to try to approach an idea, an abstract idea. How would you illustrate, what did I put down? Quantum physics, or the meaning of life. What are these things that we sort of have floating around in our heads? What's commerce? What's government? What's, being civil? I don't know. I'm just sort of coming up with sort of general ideas. What's education? What are these things that we sort of have in our heads nebulously that we are always engaging in, but have no real story behind? How do you make something that illustrates these, like, let's say, let me be a little more concrete. Let's say we want to make a comic book about quantum physics. Does everyone know what quantum physics is? It's the idea that little particles can exist in two places at once, and anyway. It's a very out there concept. So how do you illustrate it? You find images that maybe have people involved in the generation of the ideas. You find images of tools used in the investigation of the ideas. It might be more text heavy rather than image heavy when you're working on idea conveyance. And you can also use images that are metaphors when talking about ideas. So how do you show a picture of the meaning of life? You show babies and sunflowers, or rainbows and, waves in the ocean. I don't know. I'm making this up on the spot. Once you sort of first come up with the content, then you start searching for your images, right? Based on whether you're working on a story, an abstract idea, or a train of thought. With train of thought, the advantage is you make a frame, you put it together, and then you look at it and you think of, what does this make me think about? And then you go gather more stuff and work on it that way. So that's general content ideas. Now, I would like everybody to continue to think about that and write down ideas as I'm talking, just so you have them at hand when you start working on things. What I'm going to do is show you the actual physical generation of one pane, and then place it onto one page. And then hopefully you guys will be able to extrapolate from that and continue on as I work. Now, I'm going to do it very simply to begin, and then as class proceeds today, I'm going to take your attention away from your work and give you other techniques to utilize to change how things look in your comic strip. Okay? But to start, what I'm going to do is talk about how to lay out a page, to set up a document, basically, that is of a certain size. And then I'm just going to review making layers and making layer masks to extract portions of images. I'm going to make a composite, and then I'm going to place that composite into our layout and also put it inside either a rectangle or a circle or some sort of frame that I could then manipulate as I please. Okay. So what I was doing is I was thinking about Occupy Wall Street as a comic source material. So I have a bunch of images that I hopefully have here. Let's see. Sorry. Okay, so in Photoshop this semester, you're going to find that people have come in and messed with how Photoshop looks. Right? There's a lot of classes in this classroom. And I just opened up Photoshop, and it's showing me a bunch of panels all over the place, and it's confusing. What I like to do is keep things simple in my workspace, and every time I approach a computer here or in any other lab, I'm always going to, when running Photoshop, first thing is hit Window and go down to Workspace and click on Essentials. What this is going to do is reset my panels to where I like them. And if this doesn't look right, I'm going to go to Window, Workspace, Reset Essentials. There we go. That's how it should be. This is the layout, and honestly, right, I'm looking through to all this stuff behind in Finder and Firefox and Adobe Bridge, but this is the layout that we used last class for Photoshop. Please always go to Window, Workspace, Reset Essentials, and it'll show up like this. Okay? Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is give yourself a document, and we're going to call this one page 1, page 2. Start with that. Page 1, page 2. We're going to make this width in inches here. We're going to make it, actually, we can just go right here, US paper, and go to letter size. There we go. So we go to preset, US paper, and by default it populates these measurements with the correct size for printing on a piece of paper. Now, the funny thing is, actually, this is width 8.5 and height 11. We actually want it the other way around. We want 11 inches wide and 8.5 inches high. Make sure your color mode is red, green, blue color, or RGB color, and you hit OK. Now, this is the document we're going to be putting things together in. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be working on images and then populating this document. Okay? And so what I'm going to do is just make another new document here, hit OK. And now in this one, I'm going to start placing my pictures and start working in a new document. The first one I just opened, I named page 1 and page 2. It's really my page 1 and page 2. What I'm going to work on right now is maybe frame 1 of page 1. Yeah?
Actually, the border of the ruler on the outside.
The border of the what?
The ruler, just like a little...
If you go to View, Ruler, View, go up to View, it says Show Ruler or Hide Ruler. It'll give you that. so if I have all these pictures, and I'm in here in the Photoshop place dialog box, everybody remember this? We went to place, and we placed our pictures through this. It's not as easy when you have a bunch of pictures. I'm going to jump out of Photoshop for a second and show you how I would work. And I'm like, oh, I got all these pictures, but I can't remember which is which.
Yeah.
What you're going to do is instead of using place, you come up here in the upper left-hand corner of Photoshop and click on the button that says BR. It says Launch Bridge. You could also go to File, Browse in Bridge. Either one of those will pull up this program, which is part of Photoshop. I'm going to be talking about Bridge and utilizing it. And then I'm going to go to the folder where my images are and find the pictures that I was planning on using. So, once I find a picture that I want, I can drag it and drop it into Photoshop from Bridge. It's the same as place it. Dragging and dropping from Bridge is the place command, except you get to preview it. I'm going to repeat that in just a second. So let's say I put this image down. I'm going to press enter. The X goes away. The image is placed. Oh, that looks good. So maybe I want another picture here. I'm going to take this one, move this a little bit out of the way, click and drag and pop that into my document here, right? So now I have these two pictures. I'm going to add a layer mask to this picture. So we remember the layer mask allows you to render portions of your image or of your layer invisible using a brush tool. So here I am not brushing on that. What did I just do? So here I am. Maybe getting rid of this guy's poster there and letting this other stuff show through. And maybe I'll go back to Bridge again, find another picture to add to this, and drag that in. Put that in. Position that one as I please, add a layer mask, brush with a black brush to show through. Until I get a composition that pleases me. We're going to add text. And let me just show you how to do that right now, because obviously that's part of putting together the comic book. We have text right here. Use the horizontal type tool for now. When you open the horizontal type tool, you'll see that your property bar allows you to choose your font, just like in Microsoft Word or whatever. So I'm going to choose a font. I'm going to choose a font color. I'm going to make it yellow. And now I'm going to choose a place to start typing. So now, let's imagine that this is the frame that I want to put in to my comic. I'm going to save it. I'm going to call it frame 1. going to come right back to my page 1, page 2 layout, which has nothing on it right now. Right? But this is going to be where I put all my frames, all my content that I'm generating elsewhere. And now I'm going to go to place. There's my frame 1 that I just generated. Right? I saved it to my desktop. It happens to be right there. And I'm going to place it. Do I want it this big? No. I want it much smaller. So I'm going to click and drag from a corner and then place it. And I'm going to repeat. So let's say now I'm going to make another image. I'm going to come back into Photoshop, make a new image. I'm going to call this frame 2. I'm going to get some more content. And oops, you notice how I just dragged one picture in and tried to just drag another in? When you have this X over a picture, you need to apply either your placement or your transformation. And so I need to press enter or return to do that. And now I could drag in my second picture, or third picture, or fourth picture. Say I want to rotate that. I can't do anything else to the picture behind it until I apply it, return, and that X will go away. Remember, you can't do anything to anything else when there's an X over one of your pictures. I'm going to put some text on this, maybe. So let's say I want to put this and I save it, frame 2, and find my page 1, page 2 document, and then file, place. This is too big. I'm going to make it smaller. Now, this is starting to look okay to me. Like, I feel like I have a sequence going here. But honestly, I'm not getting a sense of visual composition like I was talking about. Right? If you look at any of these graphic novels, there's much more distinction between frames than what I'm creating now. To create more distinction between your frames, what you're going to be using is a shape tool. And the shape tools are right here. You're going to either use a rectangle tool or other shape. Simply draw around it. It's going to go on top, honestly, right? So we have that on top. But we have now shape 1, we know frame 1, frame 2. We're just going to bring this shape lower in our layers panel and have the ability of putting a rectangle around it. Let's say we actually don't want the white showing up in this. We're going to be talking about blending mode soon, where you can have your images interact differently with layers behind them, or layers in front of them. We're going to talk about that a lot a little bit later in class. So what I'm really hoping that you guys do in the first half of class is come up with an idea if you haven't already. Gather images for that idea and start creating a layout. Remember that we're dividing our page in half. We're doing 8.5 by 11. But this size right here is 5.5 inches. And you want to make sure that you're conscious of that. Can you overlap it? Yeah. Yeah, you can. But as we get more and more complicated with our page layouts, you'll find that it's going to be difficult. Right now, what I've shown you is how to generate a single front and back print, right, on that layout. What we're going to be doing actually is, in the end, taking two pieces of paper, folding them in half, right? And this actually might be something you'll find helpful in conceptualizing what you're going to make. Just take two pieces of paper, fold them in half, right cover, right, back cover, and here, I'm sort of misleading you a little bit with this first layout, just to simplify things. Because here we have page 1, page 2, right, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6. And so what's on the other side of page 1 is page 6, which is why you kind of don't want to overlap into that next page. Right now we're just saying page 1 and 2. This is just a single sheet that we're working on. As we progress, we're going to make page 2 into page 6. Page 2 goes on to the other side of page 5. Don't worry too much about this right now. I just want to show you what's going on in the long run. What you can do, though, is take your folded up little book here and sketch shapes, put ideas there. Oh, here's going to be my first frame, second frame. Might have something else. I'm going to break this up over here, put some pictures over there. What are you limited to? Your imagination, really. I talked about how to get pictures from online last class. What I'd like to do is just really quickly show you how to use the scanners in the room in case you want to scan material from books from the library. I also want to talk about, I was going to talk about using phones and cameras to take images, but for now I'd really just like to emphasize the scanner as a resource. Online you have plenty of places to find pictures. Last class we went to Flickr, FLICKR.com to find pictures. Some of the pictures we had to use a screen capture to gather because people didn't want to have their pictures downloaded. To do a screen capture, you hold down Apple plus Shift plus the number 4. And what that allows you to do, everybody take a look at my mouse pointer. When I do Apple Shift 4, it changes into that coordinate pointer, and I can click and drag a rectangle, and after I let go of that, it will create this screenshot image that I just made. I can use that. Let me just hop over to the Library of Congress. I want to show you something about the Library of Congress. Don't everybody go there at the same time because it's not going to work. We can't all go at the same time. I'm going to go into the Library of Congress, click on the Prints and Photographs division, loc.gov/pictures. And honestly, I'm just going to search for, I'll search for Paramus right now. I'm going to do a quick search just to get some images. There's two ways to find images on the Library of Congress. The Library of Congress has this front door that I'm looking at right now. There's a search, there's indexed images that you can then click through, view large, save, simply by clicking on Save Image As. Let's control click to open this Save Image As. You get to save it. I'd give it a title. The names are really gibberish. Now the thing about the Library of Congress is they scanned many, many, many more images than they were able to index, because indexing takes somebody sitting and typing into a database. So if you look here at any picture, I'm just going to show you my navigation once again. Went to the Library of Congress, prints and photographs. I happen to search for Paramus. You can search for whatever you want. I got a return of images. I clicked on one of the images. I clicked on View Larger right here. Any of these is fine. And I got the image showing up. Now the image is not in a web page. It's really just the image. There's no text around it. There's nothing else going on. And if I look at my address bar right here, you can see that it's a JPEG file that we're looking at. And in fact, look at the URL. This is not what we typed before. This is lcweb2.gov/pnp/blah, blah, 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 blah. A lot of gibberish. If you erase the file name and just leave gibberish there, you get listings, directory listings, of lots and lots of images, some of which, many of which, have not been indexed. And some of which makes sense. So here's like some of this gibberish actually makes sense. Like here's NJ0200, which kind of implies to me that the pictures that we're going to find in here are pictures in New Jersey, right? Sort of makes sense. What does NJ stand for? Hello, NJ. This looks like tax photos, actually. But you can actually go all the way up to, you could really honestly just type this address in your web browser, lcweb2.loc.gov/pnp, and you'll have this huge directory structure which has lots of subdirectories and lots of other subdirectories and lots of other images within each subdirectory. You're really going to be hunting. There's no way of knowing what you're going to find. And this could be a real good leaping off point for people that want to do a more free association set of image generation. Find some old images, what does it make you think about, put some other stuff in them, and then what does that make you think of? I'm leaving this really open right now. I'm not giving you much direction intentionally, because I feel like the less direction I give you as far as creative choices, the more interesting things that you'll generate. Now I'm going to come around and help you technically and creatively throughout the rest of class. As I said, I'm going to take your attention away from your work in about an hour and a half. Take a break. I'll show you some new techniques to make your images look a little more comic book-like if you want them to. I left my images pretty straightforward photographic here, but using things like blending modes and filters will convert our images into more of a drawing type look, if you will, or aesthetic. Okay, any questions? I just threw a lot out there. I'm happy to answer questions. Yeah.
Are we supposed to base this off like our own story or big story?
Either your own story, or a story you pick, or an idea, or honestly, you could just do a train of thought and make it what image makes you think of what else. Okay?
Do you have scrap paper?
Yes, there's lots of scrap paper in that box by the printer. Yeah, I do encourage you to put something on paper just to sort of suss out how you feel about things. Okay? Terrible.